Hi everyone, Jill from the Northwoods. How you doing? I hope you're doing well, and I hope you have a really Merry Christmas. I hope this has been a good holiday season for you. I would say in my own personal life, it's quiet for me, but it has been a rough one for my friends, and so I'm being there to be a support person for them. And apparently, I'm getting some kind of a cold because now my voice is going. So that's why we were a little bit late today, because apparently I might be getting sick, so we'll see how that goes. For the weight loss news itself, I had actually dropped that zero point 0.8 pounds I gained in the middle of the week. And then my boss sent me a meal. He wanted to because they take the team out for meals, and they wanted to send me a meal too. And so I got something that was pretty reasonable. It did have French fries in them, and ate some of the French fries, and in Bavarian pretzels, which were really super salty. But that's probably what's gonna be what happened next. But it was flank steaks that were sliced up, and I lament a little bit that everything is so centered around meals, because I'm still trying not to gain weight. And I'm also, though, on the other side, not trying to get into like a food problem. I went grocery shopping with my friend. She doesn't drive in the snow, and so I took her to grocery shop. Her husband is very busy in his business. And I was so afraid to buy any food that I used to like, that now that kind of Manjaro has taken its foot off my neck, so to speak, and I feel better now. I feel like I can eat now. And I thought, okay, Jill, why don't you go, talk to myself, go get something that you might enjoy. It's Christmas time and everything else like that. And the first time I ended up fleeing out of the grocery store without buying anything, because I was too afraid of what might I buy. Maybe I'm going to gain all the weight back. If I buy all this food, I'm going to start putting the weight back on again. And so I walked out of there without buying anything. And so far, I've been sticking to eating pretty much what I have been eating, and that's been going all right for me. So then cuts to this week, I took her grocery shopping again, and I said, you're not walking out of there without getting something that you might like. It used to be that I would eat the Christmas steak, and that's what my boss ordered for me, so that was taken care of. But just get a couple of cookies, a couple of Christmas cookies. And, the first thought you have in your head is like, oh no, this is where it all begins, right? And no, I was able to have a couple of Christmas cookies and didn't put on any weight, and I adjusted for it in my calories, and it wasn't my best choice. But I think we have to also learn how to be a normal person after this, with having food ahedonia. We have to learn a little bit about what it's like to go out to eat with your friends, what it's like to just enjoy Christmas a little bit without. And that's going to be the tug. This is going to be, the challenge of our lives now, is that there's going to be a tug back and forth about doing the right thing or not. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about later. And then yesterday, my friends and I also went out again. We took we had eagles here. And last year we saw 50 eagles during this particular weekend at a particular spot. 50, I mean, just 50 right there in the trees all around us. And so we took someone who hadn't seen them in this number before out there. And then we went out to lunch, and my first thought was, this is a grilled cheese sandwich. It's a farm, like farm fresh, right off the farm kind of grilled cheese sandwich place. And, get a grilled cheese sandwich. And I thought, no, let's just get the tomato soup I've been getting. But they had eggnog ice cream, and I love eggnog ice cream. I used to make it for myself. Why don't you just make an eggnog ice cream shake? Enjoy the shake. And that's what I did. So it was about picking and choosing. I would rather enjoy a shake than enjoy a grilled cheese sandwich. And so I felt pretty successful about that, because I picked and chose where I wanted to put my energies towards. Instead of eating it all or eating none of it, I sort of picked a middle ground. And I think that's the direction I'm just going to have to keep going with that. So that was one success. Then I got the meal that my boss ordered for me, and it was, like I said, a flank steak that was grilled. It was very good, and it had some vegetables with it, and it also had a Bavarian pretzel, which was again, really salty. And I haven't put salt on. I used to be the salt monster. If you watch Star Trek, the original generation, I put salt on everything. I was Nancy the salt monster. And in the last, year and a half, I haven't put salt on anything. And boy, was this salty. And so I brushed off most of the salt. And the way that the week worked with weight loss, so it used to be with being on full strength Monjero, is my weight might go up a couple of ounces and then down, and I would lose weight, and up a couple ounces and then down, and I would lose more weight. This is really flexy, like a little bit like it was before I started taking Monjero entirely, where you might have a day where you put on 1.5 pounds, and then the next day it's gone. And it's just been very up and down. And so so I had this extra special meal on Friday, and on Friday I had lost the 0.8 pounds I had put on, and I was like, yeah. And then with that very salty meal, I had actually put on 0.7 above the 0.8. So now I'm up 1.5. And like I said, I'm still keeping within, like I sort of, people, when they're trying to maintain weight, they'll put themselves at a tether weight. And if they either go above or below, I'm not going to fight below, but if you get 5 pounds above that, we go into, lockdown. We're going to strive really hard for this. And so right now I'm 1.5. Again, this is probably 3-4 weeks since I started or deciding to be on maintenance. Week 2 after dropping my dose. And so, it was a big meal. It was a lot saltier than I'm used to eating. We'll see how it goes the rest of the week. The other part of it is, too, is I am feeling better, except for this cold. And it's kind of a weird situation. I feel more energetic. I'm able to get things done. I don't think since really February I've been able to do much around this house. I exercise, I do my podcasts, I do my work, I do all the things that I have to do, but not much above that, and I did go out hiking with my friends and stuff like that, but I'd be wiped out. And that has gone away. I no longer take these mega naps after just living life. And I started returning to doing chores around the house. My friend wants to help me refinish the floors in this house. And I haven't gotten anywhere with doing the things I need to do to get ready for that. And so now I'm starting to go back into that again. And I'm starting to improve on my cardio plan. We'll talk next week about New Year's and what my plans are for the new year, and then how you can also look at your own plans for New Year's, because I think people kind of mess up New Year's Eve in a way that sort of screws up their whole year. So we're going to talk about how to go into a new year fresh, because I do think there is something about, when you move to a new town, you start new habits. When I grew up in the military, and we went through 4 or 5 different bases in my mental, where I was a kid, but where I was able to remember, moving from base to base to base. And each time I sort of took a reflection. Yeah, I was a little weird kid, about what I wanted to change. And when I was in grade school, I was the class clown. I mean, I really was a class clown, telling jokes and disrupting class and being goofy. And I decided that when we moved our last time from the way Northwoods to the middle Northwoods, I was going to stop doing that. I was going to, I'm still going to be friendly. I'm going to still tell jokes, but I'm just not going to be the class clown anymore and take things a little bit more seriously. So I think New Year's gives us a fresh start. It helps us. So if we buy a new house, fresh start. We get a new job, fresh start. So I do believe in the power of having a brand new year, but let's go into 2026 doing it the right way. That's kind of the plan I have and what I'm really going for. So we'll talk about that, like I said, that next week. The interesting thing that's coming along with the lower dose with Monjero is now I thought I had fixed my sleeping perfectly. Like I have never in my life slept so well, and it's been great. I go to bed and I am out, and I'm out the whole night. Well, I think what turned out to be, and this was kind of a suspicion of mine, is Monjero 12.5 was making me so tired I was going to bed exhausted. And so of course I was sleeping great, and now when I go to bed I'm not exhausted anymore. And so I think I'm not sleeping as well. I wake up in the middle of the night a little bit more often, and so I'm going to have to find better ways of keeping asleep. So that's kind of like the ups and downs of it. But so far, no cravings. I'm able to manage my food and eat food. Although I did have a funny thing. My friend and I were talking about the prices of Diet Coke. And Amazon had this incredible sale on Diet Coke. And I said, Did you, I told her, I said, Did you see this? You can get a lot of Diet Coke for this price. And she was like, Oh, yeah. And then suddenly I was like, Yeah, I should order some. And then I'm like, there it is. There is the Diet Coke first hint of a craving. And I thought, I'm going to have to watch out in summer because that's really when I want a Diet Coke. It's hot outside. You go to a restaurant, you pour it in a cup full of ice, and boy, that tastes good. So I'm going to have to watch out. That one small hint of craving came back into my soul. So there you go. But like I said, I'm not too worried. I do believe that this extra zero point 0.7 that was on top of the 0.8, 1.5, is the salt. I think it's the salt, and I think it'll wash itself out in this upcoming week. But I did go to the grocery store, like I said, and I did buy groceries. I bought some things that I would enjoy. Like I said, I got the cookies. I got a rotisserie chicken. I used to eat rotisserie chicken all the time at Costco. I bought myself one there. And, I'm going to expand things very slowly. Just one small step at a time. There we go. There's my podcast. But that's the plan, is for me to just really just be very careful about it. And the rotisserie chicken has been doing really well for me. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. So a couple of things in the clinical trials world. Like I said, I work in clinical trials. Oh, one quick thing too is I work for a hospital, as I mentioned before. And I told the person at the eye center, she's great, and I got a chance to meet her a ton before I got hired at this job. I told her about my eye thing, and she was very curious. She wanted to hear, how that turned out. So I told her what it was, and she said, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that it's all going to be better." She said that the school, someone in the research, because I work for a research entity, just wrote a paper about how this optic nerve. I don't want to call it hubbub because people obviously do get something, but she wanted to say he looked into studies about it and found that it is sick people are sick. And if you have diabetes, you're going to get diabetic eye disorders. That's part of the deal. I mean, that is one of the big side effects of diabetes and why you want to prevent having it happen. And when you put people on clinical trials, there's something called adverse events and serious adverse events. And a lot of times people will, like let's just take Zepbound and Mounjaro and all of that. So they go on this drug and they got gallbladder problems. Well, overweight people get gallbladder problems. Diabetic people getting eye problems. Well, diabetic people get eye problems. And so it's very hard to split out. So you try to do it statistically. Are those people, and that's basically, I'm assuming what his study, I haven't read it yet, is saying is that, and this is what my eye doctor, my own retina guy said. He said, if you took the study that talked about optic nerve problem, it was 100,000 people in the EU. So it wasn't a clinical trial, it was a retrospective, which means we're going to look at people's medical records after the fact. 100,000 people taking Mounjaro, and 20 of them ended up with optic nerve problems, which is what I had. 17 of them got better, and 3 ended up having some form of permanent eye damage. He said if you had done that study with just people who are diabetic and did it on any drug they were taking, that number would have been much higher for the people who had permanent eye damage. So it actually shows the power of these drugs to reduce diabetes and to make people healthier when it comes to that. So I thought that was good, and she said that was our finding too. This doctor's finding is that these are sick people being sick, and that the GLP-1 actually helps them from having any sort of permanent damage. So I thought that was good news. All right, so 2 new studies you must have heard about them. They were kind of big studies in the world. One of them has to do with looking at maintenance, and it was called Attain Maintain. All studies have kind of funny names to them, but it's basically the pill form of GLP-1s, and it's called orforglipron. I can't ever say any of these words, so that's why. And everyone always laughed at me when I did clinical trials training because I can't say any of these words. And you should hear me say concomitant medicine, which I can't say. So anyway, this brand new study that came out is a phase 3 study. So, like I said, we did a thing about studies before because, first you want to see, does it hurt people? Is it effective? And then what are the endpoints? Where are these, at? And this one was looking at, does this pill form of GLP-1 help people maintain their weight loss? And guess what? It did. This phase 3 study showed that after switching from an injectable like Mounjaro, Wegovy, Ozempic, they switched from the injection to the pills, and nearly all of their previous weight loss was achieved through weight loss was maintained compared to the placebo. The side effects were considered to be mild to moderate and mostly gastrointestinal. And that's good news for all of us. And that's kind of, I have to tell you, why I've been thinking that's the direction I'm going to go. I asked my doctor about it the last time I talked to him. I said, do we know anything about the pill and whether this could be used for maintenance? Like I said, I saw studies along the way for the pill form, and the weight loss is not incredible. You're talking about like 28% of body fat loss with something like Mounjaro. It's more with retatrutide. I can't even say these names. It's more, but the pill was about 7 to 8%. And so that's not a huge weight loss. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't a weight loss pill. It might be for someone who can't do injectables, scared of injectables, or their travel lifestyle means that they can't put something in a refrigerator all the time, and have a shot available. So I started thinking, you know what? This pill is going to be for maintenance. That's what it is. So, this isn't a new, Mounjaro, but this is an oral pill. It'll broaden the access to it. It'll give it out to people who don't have refrigerators. That's the other big thing of it too. And this could be used as a way of just keeping the weight off. And it's called, and I'm pretty excited about that. I do hope that this will be something that I, will switch to. That's my general plan. I'm not scared of shots as much as when I first started on GLP-1, I was horrified about the shot. Now it's not such a big deal. But honestly, if there's not many side effects with it and it helps people keep the weight off. Now, the big question we have in mind is, first of all, when is it coming out? People suspect it's going to come out somewhere in March, early spring. That's what we've kind of just, figured out, is that it will be an early spring release. I did ask my doctor, I said, hey, if there's clinical trials for, and I didn't realize this Maintain was already in progress. So anyway, it's hoping, that this is something that's going to be something I can switch to. The price itself, we don't know the price. That's the big question. Initially, when Eli Lilly came out with this idea of this pill and was talking about it, they said, we would love for this to be $1 a day, which would mean that it would be like, $400 a year-ish, And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Can you imagine how many people will be helped by $1 a day pill? They said if we do that, basically when you're in clinical trials, and I know a lot of people blame pharmaceutical companies for, greed, but every dime that they go into, like I said, for every drug that makes it to market, there's 999 other drugs that didn't make it to market, that they lost money on. And if it's involved in brain-related stuff like brain cancer, it's 10,000 to 1. So, it's expensive to develop new drugs. And they said if we sell it for $1 a day, that will be the end of R&D, meaning new drugs in this sphere of pills. So the rumor on the street right now is that it'll be around $199 for the lowest dose and $399 for the highest dose, which honestly right now is not much different than the price of the shots themselves. We'll see how that turns out. So that's the next question. When does it come out? Marchish. And how much is it going to cost? We don't know yet. But like I said, if it comes in there that it controls blood sugar, it keeps the weight off, that sounds like a great thing. And like I said, it's better. If you don't have to put a refrigerator, it's a pill. I go camping a couple times a year, and I'm always like, how's my shot doing? Is it, is it okay? Is it still cold? this would be nice, but we'll see how it is. So I do think of it as, and it still is holding around. The GLP-1s and Mounjaro, they're talking about inflammation and kidney disease and heart disease, that it benefits all these things in your body. So the eye doctor was like, hey, dude, why would you ever go off of this? There's so many benefits for this. And, they have a lot of times panned out, all these different hypes about what Mounjaro could do. Many of them turned out that they been able to do it. So that's part of it as well. Yay, hi, welcome. Boy, your schedule. Hopefully this is a good time for you and you're not asleep or anything. Thanks for joining. The next big clinical trial is the phase 3 Triumph 4 trial. And this trial is talking about the new like I said, I can't say the name, retatrutide. Anyway, it was a trial that was looking specifically at arthritis, knee osteoarthritis, and to see if it also had effect. And it did have a big reduction in knee pain. And so it did improve physical functionality for that. So this study was a very limited study, but looking at that particular thing. That's great. So this is what you call a triple antagonistic. Mounjaro is a double antagonist. Ozempic was a single antagonist. So essentially, this also has something like glucagon receptors, and it's a broader drug. People feel that the reason that they like it better is they hope that if they already hit the max dose on Mounjaro, that this will help them to continue weight, because the weight loss is better with this new drug that's coming out. But it also showed people that it protected on muscle weight loss, or not muscle weight loss, muscle wasting. It protected the muscle better too. So people who were worried about that. But there was some caution in the study itself too, because people did feel stronger side effects. And some people who didn't have side effects with Mounjaro started having some side effects. So we don't know. I mean, like I said, this is all so much brand new, but that's a brand new one. And so the question is, I hoped also that this was going to be out early spring, but essentially the bottom line is that this is looking like it's going to come out maybe at the end of 2026 and maybe a little bit after that. So these clinical trials take a long time. You want to make sure, like I said, that it's effective, that it's safe, and then you figure out what the right dose is. And that is very complicated. And that's what's been paying for me and my bills in this house for a long time, because clinical trials are so complicated. So essentially, those are kind of the news of the week that everyone's been going through. And again, it's another brand new injectable, but it has two additional things in there. And so anytime you put something in your body, there's bound to be side effects, right? You eat a greasy hamburger, you're gonna have side effects. And we are kind of this black box, thing. When you put stuff in us, it comes out in some random way. But the true trials look good. You just have to, they are what they are, right? And like I said, a lot of people who got stuck on their weight, they kind of hope that this will be something that they can lose weight. We talked about before, like I started losing the most weight somewhere around, that 70 week, which everyone says it's at. And I, got almost to 80-ish pounds, and I wanted to get to 110. So that means, like I said, 25, 30 pounds, somewhere in there that I want to lose more of. And I bailed on the highest doses because it was making me feel awful. So essentially, but there are people who had a lot more weight to lose, and they are hoping that this new shot will actually help them push them over the finish line for their rest of their shot, or the rest of their weight. So again, kind of new news. But I do think, like I said, I work in clinical trials. I hear a lot of and read a lot about clinical trials. And so if you have questions, let me know. I'm not a researcher myself, but I know a lot about this industry, working in it probably for the last 30 years. So anyway, what I was thinking about today, and I was thinking about this in terms, I mentioned earlier, if you came in late, that I went grocery shopping, and I was like, no, I'm not buying anything that I haven't been eating for the last 18 months. I'm so afraid. I told my best friend, I said, I think I never had an eating disorder before, and I might be working myself into one right now, because I'm so afraid of eating anything new that I'm going to start putting on the weight again. And, we get these charged words, too. And you see this with other people in the YouTube Monjero GLP-1 world. Don't say diet. Diets don't work. Don't ever diet. Don't look at your food. You don't need to do that. Or exercise. I heard one person was talking about exercise. She goes, I used to be that person to drive myself into the grave with exercise, to let every ounce of a sweat in me, and I overdid it and I overran and I did all these things. I'm not doing it again. I'm not exercising anymore, and quit telling me in my chat channel I should exercise because I was there. It was terrible. I'm not doing it again. And, it's so funny to me because I know that I'm very much balance. Everything needs to be in balance. And so I wanted to talk about that because even I'm finding in myself, don't buy any new food, Jill. If you buy new food, you're going to gain all the weight back. And I'm finding myself getting into that particular bucket. So here's the question is that when we have these charged words, whether it's the word diet, whether it's the word exercise, whether it's the word weight, we have to have and put it into proper perspective. If we yell, diets don't work, or you have to control your diet. That's where I'm at. I do believe that we should watch what we eat and, find a healthy balance between it where we enjoy a little bit something and we buckle down at other times, and we keep that in control. But here's the thing is that these don't have to be unenjoyable. Exercise can be enjoyable. You don't have to slave away at a machine struggling just to beat every ounce of sweat out of you. And you don't have to prioritize your health or you're being irresponsible. Everything is just too extreme in this whole endeavor. And I think that, what I wanted to say about it, and this is where I'm trying to find in myself, where's my weight in perspective now? Now that I'm at a weight where I can probably stay at this weight for a good long period of time, my doctor classified me as healthy, even though I'm about 25 to 30 pounds still overweight. The question is how do we stop from blowing everything out of perspective and instead sort of go into this more quiet, steadier way in life? And so the idea is that we don't ignore our diet or our exercise or our sleep. We don't idolize it either. We don't fear it either. This is not a measure of your worth. It is just, I don't know, it's kind of funny because I wish it was more mathy. I'm a math girl. And I wish weight was like you ate X amount of calories and you did X amount of exercise and your weight will exactly be that. And it's just unfortunately not that. It's not a moral system. It's not math either. It's math-ish. And it's not a verdict on your life. These things, these measures and these tools are meant to serve your life and to make your life better and not to dominate it or judge yourself with it. So you can think about it that when there's something that is helpful and we make it more optional in life, sometimes we neglect it, right? And sometimes we have a goal in our life and we go the other direction, we become obsessed with it. And the idea is how can we keep things in proper perspective? So let's think about some ways, about it. So when people argue about diets, they're not usually arguing about food. People are arguing about exercise. They're not usually arguing about movement. And when they're arguing about weight, they're not actually arguing about the numbers. What they really tend to argue about, because I see, like I said, I watch a ton of channels, is shame and control and fear of failure and their identity. And then they're also going through something that is past. I've been dieting 50 years. I have been told by my grandmother I'm overweight. I've been told by people in school and laughed at. And so sometimes we get these stigmas associated with it. They wrap us up a little bit too much and we decide that all this is judgment and restriction, and we memorize or we have memories of times when we failed or when people told us, kind of harsh things. And in a sense, at times we are also following somebody else's rules. And one of the things I think most of us have noticed that whether you've dieted or lost weight or gained weight or started using Monjero or one of these GLP-1s, everybody's a little bit different. And what you have to do is figure out what exactly you're at. Where are you at? And not go into punishment, obsession, unrealistic expectations, and pressuring yourselves in ways that you can't meet. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about next week, about going into next year. And so then the conversation is all over the place. You see it on YouTube. I'm never dieting again. Or track everything. Track every drop of food that goes into your mouth. Or some people are like, no, you just live out your joy. Just be your joy. And if you're not pushing hard, you're just wasting your time. And these extremes lead us into bad places, and they don't lead us to consistency. Again, the one thing that, well, I'll spoiler alert the whole thing, is what will you do? What will you stick with? What will you continue to be able to maintain? That's the most important thing. And so if you look at it, if we look at diet, right? Diet is simply how you feed your body, and how you feed the body you plan to keep. We think of diet as there's so much emotion. Like I said, it's family time. It's having fun with my friends. And instead, what it is it's awareness, just being aware of what it is. It's information. I knew that eating that pretzel that was full salt, I'm going to put on some water weight, because every time we have salt, we put on water weight. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. More so, particularly with women, we are susceptible to water weight all the time. It's information. It's pattern noticing. Just noticing, when I go out to eat with my friends on the weekend, I tend to have a little bit more fun, and I tend to do better during the work week when I'm just here with myself working and eating, between, eating lunch during work and eating breakfast before work. And it's a way of supporting our energy, our mood, our joints, our blood, our sugar, and our brain function. A diet is really about us keeping this vessel alive and healthy for it. It's not a moral test, and it's not a proof of your discipline. It's not a personality type, and it's not a guarantee of outcomes either. Like I said, I wish it was more mathy. I'm a mathy girl, but it's just not. And it's not a lifelong sentence either. So one extreme, like I said, is diets don't work. And then what happens then is I'm going to eat everything I want. Instead, it's just pay attention. Pay attention to what you're doing. If you like I said, I had that meal that my boss bought me last week. Okay. This week is Christmas. That's fine. We'll have a couple of enjoyable weeks, and then we'll go back and we'll start working on our plan. It's not a punishment. It's just me doing what I've been doing for the last 18 months. This extreme too. I have to control everything. I have to be rigid. And that leads to anxiety and rebellion and burnout. And you can tell that's how New Year starts out, right? I'm going to knuckle down at the new year. I'm going to exercise 3 hours a day, and I'm not going to eat 1 ounce of sugar. And instead, food gets louder, not quieter, and we get burned out on that. And eventually, we just blow it entirely because we're just tired of it. So the middle ground is more like this. Pay attention without being obsessed. Adjust without punishing. Okay, you know what? My boss bought me a big meal. I had a big meal. I had an eggnog shake. That was fantastic. I enjoyed it. That's the other thing, is I made sure that when I was having that eggnog shake, I paid attention, literally enjoyed it. And then, if something goes wrong, like let's say I put on a lot of weight, I'm going to learn, okay, the eggnog shake was maybe a little too big, or something like that. Maybe I can ask for a half an eggnog shake because it was a little too big, but we'll learn from it. And then that's the way it's going to make us better. Or the other part of it, or just throw it out at halfway. Enjoy the half and then throw the other half out. I know it sounds wasteful, and it's not how we were raised, because there were people starving and we had to clean our plates, but that ended up not being how food works either. Exercise too. Oh, it's a punishment. Well, I ate that eggnog shake, so I have to exercise 4 hours to make up for that eggnog shake. Or there's people who actually really enjoy it. And my trainer, she loves exercise. She enjoys it. And so when she goes out to places with her friends, she brings this deck of cards, and they have this whole exercise routine based on the deck, and they love doing it. And I'm like, that is not me. But you know what? It's maintenance. It's brushing your teeth. It's like getting your oil changed in the car. That's all it is. It's about keeping a moving body moving. And like I said, I lean towards strength training. Strength training, I think, is what saves us. Cardio is great. It's good for the heart. but it's not going to do what we need when it comes to losing weight, and it's not going to help as much in preserving muscle while we lose weight. So all we're doing is we're trying to preserve mobility. We're trying to support our independence. So I'm getting to the age where I'm starting noticing the generation above me is starting to lose their independence. And it came with people losing their motion. You know, they stopped exercising, stopped going for walks, that kind of thing. It's also about stress regulation. It helps burn out stress in our own bodies. And it's about building in long-term resilience for us. What it's not is it's not you making up for that eggnog shake you had. It's not a competition with your past self or your trainer or your best friend. It's not proof of your virtue. It's not a requirement that you have to suffer. And we'll talk a little bit about exercise plans that I'm going to follow in the new year at next week's show. But it should connect you to life, you know, and be something that movement can be joyful. Sometimes movement is boring. They all count. And the end of it is that we are just trying to maintain this body just like we maintain our car. We get the brakes changed, we get the oil changed, we bring it in every once in a while to make sure the mechanic says it's doing all right. Same thing with our exercise too. So we're just keeping this body going. And the last charged focus is the word weight. And, you know, I go through that too. It's a data point. It's not a diagnosis. That's what my doctor was trying to get to me. He says, dude, I know you want you to, he didn't say dude, but I know you want to lose the last 25 pounds, but there's no right answer here. Right now you're healthy. Keep the healthy. And like I said, I sat on that and I thought about it for some period of time. And, you know, you'll see on the internet, some people tell you weight is everything. And some people will tell you weight is nothing. And some people will say, oh, no, being overweight, you should just love your body. And other people say, oh, no, you know, you should be as scrawny as you possibly can. I mean, you see the Hollywood people, they do not look good right now. And it's really kind of bad. Last week we talked about my DEXA scan. And as we know, weight is made up of fat, bone, muscle, marrow, water weight, and food, and then various inflammation, which I think is the swelling, which is probably water weight as well. And it trends over time. You know, if conditions are consistent, you will put on muscle, or you will lose muscle, or you will gain water weight, or you'll lose water weight. And like I said, for women in particular, the weight tends to be a real roller coaster. You know, that you're in this part of your cycle and you gain a ton of water weight, and then all of a sudden it all goes away, you know, at another part of your cycle. And so that is part of it too. What it doesn't necessarily measure is health, effort, you know, your discipline, your strength, your hormones, you know, any of those types of things. And we know, if you're in my boat where you're suddenly getting older, it changes over time too. You know, it changes with age and it changes with things like menopause. And so it does change. And I think that's why this GLP-1 has been such a hot topic, because suddenly people take GLP-1 and they start dropping weight in the same diet that they were having before, and now they're dropping weight. Something broke, you know, or gets broken in people where they stop losing the ability to lose weight, and suddenly now you can see, okay, this is what I need, you know, to do in order to do that. So yeah, weight is not something that you can sit there and judge. I always felt, I think I liked Weight Watchers in general, but that was always it. You had weekly weight gain, and you'd stand there in front of this person and go, oh, but, you know, I had a Bavarian pretzel and that had a lot of salt on it, so I probably gained a lot of, you know, you felt like you had to explain, and there's no need to explain. The idea is it's just a signal. It's not the steering wheel. It's not a judge. It is just telling you this is the direction things are going in. Yeah, it's a real roller coaster for sure. And weight shouldn't drive every decision, but the trends. You look at the trends. You know, that's the idea. So I put on, after I dropped in Mounjaro dose, 0.8 pounds. Okay, I lost the 0.8 pounds. And then I had a big meal this week, and I gained 1.5 pounds. I suspect all that's going to come off in this next week, just because it was that really salty Bavarian pretzel, I'm pretty sure. But, you know, it's not a real thing. My clothes are still fitting the same. I feel more energized now that my dose is lower. I'm more active. I'm able to do more things around the house. My mood is good. So it's one metric. It's one metric. and we put it in as the loudest metric, but there are other metrics out there. And so that's why people, when they're on maintenance, they call it tethering, where you sort of pick an anchor weight, and then if you go up or down beyond that anchor weight, then you adjust accordingly. But you sort of allow yourself a range, because one day you gain a pound and a half. Like I said, I was down 0.8 pounds 2 days ago. Now I'm up 1.5 pounds today. I suspect that tomorrow I'm going to drop probably a pound because of the pretzel. So people either avoid weighing themselves, they have fear of the scale, or I measure myself every day. And part of me thinks that I might reduce that to 2 times a week. I don't know. I'm still planning that out. But it also doesn't have an emotional impact on me. You have to judge accordingly to you. So the way is that weight can be checked. It can be noted. And you can look for trends. Don't look at, an extra pound a day or a loss of a pound a day. It's, again, a real roller coaster, as you said. So notice, and don't tell a story about it. I mean, that's the thing. We feel like we have to do it. This is about long-term strategy, and bodies aren't static. They change with age, illness. They just change with season. Right now we're in, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm sort of like a bear, and in winter I just start putting on bear fat, and then summertime I tend to lose it a little bit better. But it can be stress, it can be menopause, it can be all sorts of things. So don't do that, but just note it. It's about that. So we'll go ahead and get started closing up. But I also want to leave it up to anyone who's in the audience. Does anyone here have questions or comment, or how's your journey on all of this going, while I kind of finish up some small steps. So the big thing that you can do, I'm big on reframing, if you ever listen to my podcast, which means just telling yourself a different story. It's not lying to yourself. When words feel heated, don't be afraid. Instead, treat this, don't treat this word as a problem. Treat it as like, okay, this is one measurement. It's a benchmark. It's something like that. And if you have a heated word like diet and like exercise, instead, say, okay, this word feels charged to me. Why? Who, it's not right or wrong. Notice the heat in it and just bring it back to where that word is actually at. The other thing, too, is try to separate words from the story. If you hear, like I said, I watch some other YouTube people out there. If you hear people saying, yeah, exercise is great, strength training is great, and you hear out of it, oh, I need to beat myself into the ground until I'm weeping in tears at the bottom of the gym floor, that's your story. That is not what exercise is. So try to bring that word in there. Figure out what exactly this word went wrong for you, and instead try to shrink the horizon a little bit. Talk about what it is you'll be able to do, reasonable things that you'll be able to do, not just for this week, but for, maybe forever. What's the bare minimum? And that's what we're going to talk about next week, because there are some ways of looking at this that we will talk about. But the idea is you have to solve this just for yourself, one small step at a time, one meal, one walk, one conversation to yourself, or maybe you have to take a pause and get a little perspective on it and reduce the stress out of it. Christmas time is absolutely the wrong time to start thinking about how much weight you're going to lose and getting honestly overwhelmed. I could get wigged out about gaining 1.5 pounds, and I'm not, because it is Christmas time, and then we're going to do better coming up after this, because all the snack foods and all the Christmas cookies are going to go away, and we're going to go back to the normal things. So, just recognizing yourself, that you might be overwhelmed, or you feel like everything matters, and instead lower the threat level about it. Instead sort of look at this, what would a good week look right now? And start being careful about paying attention to yourself. And so, this is a tougher time to lose weight this time of year. So, it absolutely is. I like I said, I never liked the idea of starting New Year's diets, because it's harder for me in winter than in summer, when, I live in a place that has pretty significant winters. It was 8 degrees out when I got up this morning. I'm not going to go for a run. So I think, you got to figure out what works for you. This is a gym time of year, and gym times of year are hard to motivate for as compared to going out and going for a hike or going for a run or going for a bike ride. So, figure out one thing that you're just willing to do right now. Is it, making sure you get the water? Is it making sure that you get the standing up rings on your watch? Or is it just doing a stretch video once a day or something like that? But just figure out what you're willing to do right at this point. And if you're not willing to do more, then you have to live with that decision for right now. So you have to do what you're willing to do right at this particular moment. So yeah, so it says, you said that there's too many things that make a difference to losing weight and what works and what doesn't work. Yeah, there are just so many things. That's the biggest thing, is that I just love all these people who, and to me, honestly, before the pandemic, so I got, like I said, about right smack dab the week before the pandemic started, I went to the doctor. She says, you're diabetic and we're going to have to do something about it. Boom. All of a sudden there's COVID, and I'm like, I'm not going to go back to the doctor. The doctors have enough to worry about right now. And I started to work on it on my own. And that's when I found out I no longer was able to lose weight. Before that point, I was able to do all these things, like people said, just drop my calories, exercise a little bit more, and I dropped weight like a champ. That stopped working to me. But all of a sudden, it's water weight, it's menopause, it's like I said, I think metabolisms get broken when you've been overweight too long or maybe too much. And something happens, and so you say that you should really do more stretching and exercise when you get out of bed and wake up very stiff. Yeah, bad back. So one of the things I started doing is I found some quick videos, and I started a morning routine of doing a morning stretch. And some of them on YouTube, I'll try to find the links and put them in the notes here, were like a quick 5-minute in bed stretch routine. And it was pretty interesting. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't that be amazing if you wake up in the morning and you just do a quick stretch? Because I too am getting at that age. I think, I've said this before too, that you get to this part where you go to gym class, right? Or you go to a trainer and they'll say, oh, you have to warm up and you have to cool down. Well, I have to tell you this, I never did any of that. And I was like, I'm not wasting my time warming up and cooling down. I'm just going to go exercise. I was able to do that probably for the first 40 years of my life. And then all of a sudden I'd wake up one morning and like, hey, you know what? I'm a little sore right now. And all these things that I think you sort of were told all along in your life about good practices suddenly become more important the older you get. And so that the idea is doing like a morning routine and even a night stretch or something in the middle of the day, because yeah, it can get really stiff. And oh, that'd be great. Yeah. When your doctors give you an exercise, I'd love to see that. But the idea is that, what is it you're willing to do? But having a morning routine, and, each of us are a little bit different. And you're going to have to figure out what works for you. Now, what you're saying is you have back problems, you're stiff in the morning. Yeah, address it. Get all over that. And, and try to address kind of those things right away. For me, I'm having a problem. I just sit too much. I get involved in my work, and then suddenly it's 4 hours later and I haven't stood up. So, figure out what's the worst thing going on with you and go tackle it. Next week, we'll talk a little bit about how to come out with a plan for the rest of the year. So any questions out there before you have an evening routine is far better than your morning routine. Morning routines are hard. It's just a fact of life. I think for me, I'm not a morning person either. I was at church this morning and I was saying, I don't understand why church is always so early. If anyone wants me to hear something, they better say it to me after like 10 a.m. because I'm just not hearing anything. So I don't do very well with morning routines, and I do fantastically with evening routines too. Well, all right. I appreciate everyone out there joining. And if you have any questions, you can put comments in the chat channel. You can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. And I'm always happy to talk or address issues. This is the challenge of all our lives. This is it. It was a big challenge to lose this weight. And now that I'm happy-ish with the weight I've lost, now the biggest challenge of my life is to keep it off. And maybe you're at a different point, or maybe you just started with Monjero. Happy to answer questions. I appreciate you being out there. And thanks so much. And I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. And thank you for being there. I appreciate it.